Trigger warning. This will trigger Pan-Africanists. This will trigger pro-blacks. This will trigger hoteps. Now, one thing I like to do is continue reading. I like to stay consistent with reading. Okay, this is something I really like to do. And the books in which I read are usually a few subjects. There are African thinkers' thoughts, also those outside of Africa's thoughts who have the same kind of similar thinking, such as Castro, such as Hugo Chavez, such as Maurice Bishop, such as Faz Fanon, who were, outside of that African spectrum, basically. Secondly, history. I like to read about history, African history, and also just Islamic history as a whole, right? Thirdly, spirituality, the inner sciences, books about the inner sciences, basically. Okay, the internal sciences. So the books I'm reading right now are in regards to a great thinker by the name and one of the best liberators that our continent ever had, by the name of Amilcar Cabral. Okay? One thing about people who label these guys as Pan-Africanists is I don't think they read their books. I don't think they read the books of Maurice Bishop. I don't think they read the books of Samora Machel. I don't think they read the books of Patrice Lumumba. I don't think they read the books of Amilcar Cabral. I don't think they read the books of Thomas Sankara. I think what they do is they misconstrue visits that they may have had to the West, and they misconstrue solidarity with Pan-Africanism, because the thing is, none of these individuals called themselves Pan-Africanists. They always pushed the line of African nationalism. Me, myself, I am an African nationalist, okay? I wear that badge proudly, right? Now, without being quote unquote arrogant, right? I'm not trying to be arrogant, but this book right here, right? This book that I have right here, this ECOWAS book, although ECOWAS needs a lot of change, okay? This ECOWAS book makes my commitment to the continent, the burden is heavier on my shoulders than someone from outside the continent, okay? The burden to do well, the burden to bring benefit, the burden to get us out the shackles of colonialism is more on me than it is someone else outside. Now, the reason why I say that is because of the simple fact that the thing is, we are not the same. Africans are not a monolith, but you let people, you let these people outside of Africa, being the Aframs who are coming to Ghana wrecking havoc now, mostly Keishas that are doing that, going to Gambia getting liquidated, mostly Keishas doing that. That's the thing. That therein lies the problem, is because even me, I went to Pan-African circles, and it seems like they were mostly matriarchal in the presentation and matriarchal and just the overall feeling. It just seems like they kept on talking about women, kept talking about women, kept talking about a women's place. They never really talked about the other stuff, okay? The more important things. So this, unfortunately, is not going to work for us in Africa, because the thing is that with the quote unquote Pan-Africanists, it seems like it's women leading the charge, and it seems like it's Keisha who is leading the charge, okay? Whereas African nationalism, you have guys like Ibrahim Traore, you have guys like Assimi Goita, you have guys like Abdul Rahman Chiani. Now the Guinea president, I don't really know of. The Guinea-Bissau president, I'm just waiting for a military junta at this point. We tried twice, but it failed. But I think third time's the charm, inshallah, because he's just a cuck. And I hate to say it, and you know, I love my Niger brothers so much. You know, my Niger brothers, I keep you guys in my heart, okay? You guys are in my heart. But Tinimbu's a cuck as well, okay? Let's just be honest. So, for example, you look at what the Sahel is doing. You look at the fact that, you know, the Sahel, and now Senegal is joining the fold now. Thank God. Senegal is joining the fold. But you look at what the Sahel is doing. The partnerships is striking up. And the thing is, okay, the thing about Pan-Africanists that don't work is they try to impose their way on us, when this was never the case ever, okay? Even when we got help from Soviet Union, even when we got help from Cuba, even when we got help from China during the times of independence, even when we got help from, let's just say, North Africa, okay? Which is still on the African continent, by the way. We never adopted ideology, okay? We were never Marxists. We were never Leninists. We were never Stalinists. We were never Maoists, okay? We just read these works and then analyzed these works and how they fit into our situation. Another thing that goes against the whole pro-black Pan-Africanist thing is that they're mad at the partnerships that we strike up, okay, with different people who may not happen to be black. So, for example, you may strike up a partnership with a Belarusian for things to produce and till the land. In return, you give them grains cheaper, okay? They gave you the tractors to cultivate, right? They get the grains cheaper. Pretty fair exchange. And the problem is that people in that circle, in that Pan-African circle, think that, oh, we all we got. And if that was the case, then we would be doomed, okay? You need partners. You need strategic partners. And the thing that gets on my nerves about these Pan-Africanists is their imposition of the matriarchy upon us continental Africans, which we are not going to go for, okay? That's the thing. Oh, and even these Pan-Africanists will say that, oh, you guys are trading another colonizer for a new colonizer. That is not the case at all. Even in, I want to say, even in Nigeria, okay, their word got out, yeah, that there was a Chinese restaurant, okay, or a Chinese market that only served Chinese customers. The government of Abuja immediately closed that down. So if we were subservient to different masters, right, in the own country, international stage, yeah, I could say there's a lot to be desired. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot to be desired there. I'm not going to sit here and lie. But if they were cut, they would have let that thing go. They would have been like, oh, well, you know, it is what it is. We can't help it. You know, they're the ones that are running the show and things like that. But they didn't let that go down. They simply shut it down. Okay? I want to wrap this up. I don't want this to be long-winded, but Amilcar Cabral wrote this, okay? And we're still getting over this. We're still working on this. Okay, so if we're working on this and you're saying we are the world and we're one, then what says you, okay? So, hold on, let me see. Okay, so Amilcar Cabral wrote, "This does not mean we do not need to pay attention to this contradiction. We reject both positions which are to be found in Africa. One which says there are no tribes. We are all the same. We are all one people in one terrible unity." So the thing is that the whole thing should be many different people, one single purpose, one single goal, okay? And that's to break off from these colonizers, okay? Whether you're a Fula, whether you're a Sarakule, whether you're a Mandinka, whether you're a Hausa, whether you're a let's just say a Shua, whether you're any one of the ethnic groups in Africa, the respect for your culture and customs, as long as it's not detrimental to your well-being, should be there. But the fact of the matter is, the Pan-Africanists will try to put an umbrella over all of your customs and cultures and be like, well, we do things this way. Well, we do things that way. And this is not going to work. This is not going to work. The second to the last thing I want to talk about is the religious aspect. Thomas Sankara himself read the Bible and the Quran. You know, he read both. Now, granted, I don't know which way he was leaning, but I do know his wife was a Muslim. I do know that. I do know that his wife was Muslim. That's the one thing I do know about Comrade Sankara, is that his wife was Muslim. Samora Machel, you know, he himself even had fighters from, I want to say, fighters that were Muslim in his ranks as well. You know, that's not a surprise, but there is just a little bit of there's not that much literature written on these kind of things. Now, Amilcar Cabral says something quite remarkable about Islam. He said, in Guinea, the culture of our people is the product of many African cultures. Each ethnic group has its own culture, but they all share a common base in their worldview and their relation in society. And we know that although there are Muslim populations at bottom, there are also animists like the Balanta and others. They believe in Allah, but also believe in the Idrum spirit, and in sorcerers. They have the Quran, but an amulet on their arm and other things. Now listen to this. And the success of Islam in our land, as in Africa in general, is that Islam is able to understand this, to tolerate the culture of others, whereas the Catholics want to put a quick finish to all this and have only belief in the Virgin Mary, Our Lady Fatima, and in God and over Lord Jesus Christ. So, Islam in Africa can always mold into the African. It was always something that could be molded into the African, as long as there was no, as long as those African customs were not harmful to the African, right? So when a Pan-African comes along and says, oh, you need to stop worshiping Allah and you need to not be a Muslim, then this is not going to go down well, okay? When basically everything that an African does pretty much is in line with Islam, if it's taught the correct orthodox way, okay? There's a lot of things that we can understand. There's a lot of things that come from the Hadith that are in line with African practices, okay? But there comes the educational part that is needed, right? Another thing too is that the entitlement that the Pan-Africanists come with is not going to really go down well, okay? If you say things instead of offering something like a benefit, a tangible benefit, then what is your purpose, right? Now, finally, I want to say the feminism. I hate to say it, but yes, Keisha and other groups of women have adopted a feminism that is basically fascism, that basically does what it can to silence the voice of a man, that does what it can to basically make a man subservient to a woman, okay? It's happening in the politics, it's happening with different things. We can actually say that, and many people disagree with it, but sad, quiet as it's kept, it's true. Now, they dealt with this, okay? Amilcar Cabral, women's participation was dealt with. But the way it was dealt with was, it wasn't to make a woman out to be basically trying to compete with the man, but trying to work with the man, okay? And that's unfortunately what a lot of these women do, are trying to compete with a man. A lot of these women are just spiteful of men. Now, I'm going to read this and listen to this, okay? This is one of the female party cadres of Amilcar Cabral. By a liberated woman, I mean a woman who has a clear consciousness about her responsibility in society and who is economically independent. By a liberated woman, I mean one who is able to do all the jobs in the society without being discriminated against. A woman who can go to school to learn, who can become a leader. The liberation, so we have nothing against that, but of course there were some things that we had to come out of, some ignorance, I'm not gonna lie, back in the day there was some ignorance, amongst chieftains and things like that. I'm not going to sit here and cap. That existed, okay? Now Um, Even the women who, for example, wanted to fight on the front lines of the guerrilla fight, they found out it was like too morally taxing on their bodies. So what they did is they did more administrative duties, they taught, they did nursing and things like that, right? So with that being said, it goes to show you like that they just played their position instead of trying to overstep their position like a lot of Keisha do, right? So now, um, um, let me see. Now, a balance had to be struck. That's the thing. A balance had to be struck. And it said, and this is coming from a female cadre, she said, but some confusion has come with this freedom in regards to sexual relationships. These young women in Bissau confuse sexual liberation with the emancipation of women. Young women just sleep with anyone they wish and think this is fine. They do not understand the value of relationships with men. And they say, oh, the organization of women says we must be free. We are free because we are sexually liberated. They think this is freedom. It is not. Okay? So they had to filter out these ideas which the Keisha tries to bring. She shook her head. We do not want women to behave like men. How does Keisha try to behave like? How does Karen try to behave like? How does westernized Halima westernized, westernized maybe, let me think. Yeah, westernized Layla. How does she behave like or try to behave like? So they were combating this even back then. She said, we do not want women to behave like men, like animals. No, it is for women and men to change their attitudes. We are not becoming emancipated in order to act like men, to behave accordingly to their values. We are becoming emancipated to create a new and responsible man and women, to create a new society where both men and women understand this. Then we will have passed the halfway mark to true liberation. So this is why Pan-Africanism will not work for an African nationalist. Again, I say we are not cucks to the Russians. We are not cucks to the Chinese. They are partnerships. And throughout history, they have shown themselves to be great partners. The leadership is where the problems lie, who decide to steal a lot of the things that the Russian and the Chinese offer. But with that being said, I hope my message was loud and clear. I want to add that I'm not trying to push this exclusivity. I'm not trying to push this. What I'm trying to push is that we're open to all partners, okay, from all walks of life. If you have something that can benefit the continent and raise us up, then we're all for it, regardless of your color. But if you're coming to exploit, if you're coming to, like, you're just looking for some actual satisfaction, then yeah, of course I'm gonna have a problem with it, That's what I'm saying. I have a problem with people romanticizing the African experience, especially Keisha. And even Karen, too. She does the same thing. And the men who just want women, like them too. But with that being said, I hope this message gets to you clear. Dirdestaring Tuba, Njarama.